Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, and today I want to ask the question of should we form an authors union for traditionally and independently published authors? Uh, as a person with a very tiny platform, I know this is probably not going to get really beyond me, but I feel like the question needs to be asked, and I'm not the only one asking it. There has been some talk going around on, I guess, the formerly known as Twitter Spaces, and I have not seen it really catch on, like even on Tumblr, but here we are going through hot labor summer and entering into hot labor autumn, and maybe it is time to discuss what, forming an authors union would mean. Now, it's not to say that there aren't authors associations. There are author associations such as the Authors Guild. There is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. There's the Horror Writers of America. There's the Mystery Writers of America. There's the Romance Writers of America. You might be noticing a trend in the naming schemes here. And these associations can be very useful, in fact, because they often have, dues. They have that, so they have a fund of money that they can use to help people. They often have lawyers, and so they can be very useful once the trouble happens. They're not very useful in heading it off, type of thing. So would it be, possible, necessary for traditionally published authors and independently published authors to kind of band together and form a union similar to the Writers Guild of America for script and television writers to form a bargaining group with these to go up against these big major corporations. Remember, there are 5 big publishing houses. Simon & Schuster still exists. It has been bought out by a hedge fund management group. And the current person in charge of it used to actually be part of Random House before they were bought out by Penguin. So depending on who you talk to, depends on who is optimistic about Simon & Schuster's future and who is pessimistic about Simon & Schuster's future, because it's going to depend on if, the investment company either puts money into Simon & Schuster before selling it off again, or if they burden Simon & Schuster with a bunch of debt. That's what's going on right now. And so would it be to the benefit of traditional authors and independent authors to band together to start negotiating, the better terms of contracts with the publishing houses? And, where would this leave agents? Because we don't want to leave agents behind, Where would this leave agents, and what type of things should we be discussing? There is some stuff that I've seen brought up, the encroaching problems of an unregulated language learning model, what people are calling AI, and the encroachment of art learning models, specifically for book covers and book illustrators. And I know that would probably have to be a different division, but I would feel like the writers would want to be in solidarity with the illustrators on this one because, quality book covers. And, the way that advances are structured, there would, because of every once in a while, the hashtag publishing paid me goes around and we end up talking again about advances and how advances work and royalties and who is getting what and why they're getting what and how it's all, decided. By the way, it's algorithms and book comps and author demographics. So, those are 3 major issues. facing authors right now. And, you know, we also would have to ascribe things like what's going to be the barrier to entry into the union? You know, how do you qualify to be part of the authors union? What type of benefits other than, you know, the power to negotiate better contracts with these corporations would you be able to get from the union? Would there be, like, I don't know, healthcare? A lot of other benefits we can also consider are pensions, 401ks, things like, you know, things like that, that, you know, sectors that aren't considered basically freelancers, because that's what our authors are. We are freelancing, and that they have that, you know, authors and artists don't. You know, the union would have the healthcare benefits, and the union would have the, you know, retirement benefits. And what would be the qualification to get them? You know, what would be our minimum for type of salary, you know, salary or sales for us to be able to qualify for them, I guess. And, like, the other thing we would need to talk about is, you know, would there be lawyers to help against, like, plagiarism cases or copyright trademark offenses type of thing? Would there be, you know, would we be able to negotiate, you know, marketing for authors? And would we be able to be, you know, negotiate more editing? What about magazines? And again, once again, what about our agents and, you know, the illustrators and things like that that come up, you know, as you start talking more and more about this industry. So why are these some of the things that I'm kind of concerned about? Like, would we have us, you know, would the authors union be a big overarching thing, or would it, like the Writers Guild of America, have different compartmentalized sections? You know, so because the Writers Guild of America has a news and broadcasting section, and they have a kind of like talk show and scripted drama and movie section. You know, they have different sections within the guild that cover different people, and those have different contracts. So how would we divide it up? So one of the bigger concerns that I've had as an independent author is barrier to entry. Now, as an independent author, I have looked at different writer associations, because you want to be part of a writers association. You want access to those resources if something, God forbid, goes wrong. And so, you know, you look at them and then you get to find out what the barriers for entry are. And usually, let's say you have a traditionally published contract, you know, book, that usually gets you pretty much a free pass into almost every single authors union that I've looked at, that authors association. If you have a traditionally published book, you will get in. And okay, that's kind of understandable. And if you're an indie author, there's usually some type of monetary sales figure that you have to meet in order to be considered, I don't know, an author. And due to the way the indie market is set up, for hundreds, if not thousands, of indie authors, they are never going to meet that threshold. And through no fault of their own, because of the algorithms and the way things are pushed, and, you know, just the way it is. With Amazon and Wattpad and maybe an authors union would be able to help sort that mess out. But, you know, the barrier of entry is usually around $3,000 to $5,000 worth of sales within a set period of time. And that's generally 18 months or less. That is very, if you're like, you're just not writing in a hungry genre, I'm gonna, like, no. It is something that is not reasonable for most indie authors. But we're out there and we have published books, but we are cut out from getting any type of support from these writer associations simply because we can't make sales. So what would be a barrier of entry to a union? Would it be the traditionally published book? Would it be, you know, some sort of sales metric? Would it be having a published book and actually being able to prove you're a human being and that you actually wrote the book type of thing? So what would be that barrier to entry? And, you know, then from there, we had to go towards advances, which brings up the concern of, would higher paid, more established authors be willing to support a union? When you get an advance, okay, you're getting an advance towards the sales of your books. So sales advances can be anywhere from, on the low end, $3,000. And on the very high end, the biggest I've seen is $27 million. And if you know which book I'm talking about, good for you. I wouldn't touch that book with a 10-foot pole, much less pay $27 million for it, especially after everything came out. So when you're getting a book out there, when you're publishing as a debut, as an all bones cast the die, you know, you are kind of at the mercy of the publishing house, and there is no mandatory minimum. And, you know, as you can see, there's no mandatory maximum, especially if your book goes to auction. There's no way that that book was going to sell $27 million worth of copies. And they do this all the time. They'll buy books that they know aren't going to sell for massive amounts of money. And I don't know, did they just take the tax write-off? It could be. I have no idea. And sometimes the authors don't need that amount of money, or aren't even really the authors at all. So we need to know, will the big people be willing to be behind this, especially if the contracts start doing things such as mandatory minimum advances, and then, you know, maximum advances as well. Is there a way to, I don't know, more see what books are actually going to stand on their own and fail? If there's like a minimum set of advances, how many more books could we publish? How many more books, you know, could be marketed if there was more money going towards, instead of going to these ultra large advances that it is almost impossible for them to get back because not every book is Harry Potter. If there was more money to go towards marketing more books, and would bigger name authors be willing to get behind it to help the debut authors? You know, a lot of the bigger name authors are getting up there and they're not going to be able to sell books forever. And you have to have people coming up behind them to be a thriving industry to, you know, be able to publish their books and get more books of their books out there. So eventually they are technically the big name authors. So would I can think of a few that would probably get behind it, but I can think of some that probably wouldn't too. And this is, and when I'm saying this is, it is very unlikely that you're going to earn out your advance, and you're not going to start getting royalties on your book for a couple years in, so you better be writing the next book type of thing. And there's been some kind of lack of education, I think, going on over what an advance is and how it works. But it also, you know, there's also been this huge, massive push by publishers for authors to come with built-in reading platforms. They, come with readers already. So they want authors to do their own marketing, and it is insane. Like, writing isn't bad enough as a full-time job, but doing some sort of sales marketing or having a gimmick on TikTok, that is like a lot of work. It is like exhausting, and it's going to take away from whatever time you have to write. And so that means the books that they want on contract under a certain amount of time might not get written. Not up to standard, and even if you don't have the George R. R. Martin problem, I know how it ends, I just don't have motivation to write. Okay, well, that sounds like a you problem. The thing is, if we could renegotiate these concepts of advances, and maybe we can renegotiate how many edits every book gets. We can renegotiate how, big of a marketing push every book gets depending on its advance, so that you're not like, you don't enter a bookstore and go, where's my book, as a debut author, and be like, oh, they didn't even face it out on the shelves, nobody knows it's here. How can you sell, how can you know that a book exists if they don't do any marketing for it, and they were telling you to do all the marketing, and you don't have a big TikTok or a big YouTube or a big Instagram, and the only way you're going to do that is to get some sort of gimmick going, either like you're Lindsay Ellis and you're criticizing everything, or making, videos about, educational edutainment videos about different subjects, and then you get run off to social media when you just say one thing that wasn't actually wrong, or you're that's what happened to the author of Iron Widow too. Is she had a couple edutainment type of YouTube videos and a pretty big TikTok following, and that's how she got on the New York Times bestseller list. But most authors, not only do they not want to do that, they don't know how to do that. It's very, very, luck a lot of times on what makes it viral and what makes a big YouTube or a big TikTok. That's just the way. So would an authors union be able to negotiate these better contracts for editing and for marketing than what the agents, even agents don't have a lot of control over this. They can try, for you, but they don't have, as much power as you want to think. The people with the power are the publishers and the marketing teams. So, and what would happen to those agents? Because a lot of those agents, they used to be editors, but they weren't being paid enough as editors, so they became agents, and because they could get more in commission as agents than they could as a salaried editor. So the editors that are left, are really overworked, and he's working on 6 projects at a time, and then you got the editors that are, here that are agents. And so if you're lucky you have an agent that used to be an editor, they might be able to help you, but they might not have time either. That would be taking away from whatever work they've got that is going to bring them in money. That's a lot of free labor to edit a book, So we want to be able to bring our editors along too. We want to be able to make sure that there's enough editors and they're being paid as well. And let me see, what else do I have in here? I know we could also talk about like magazine pay, and very big thing is health insurance and other type of benefits, retirement benefits too. And we wouldn't have this problem in the United States of America if we had a nationalized health care system, but we don't. So they can use health care as one of their ways to put pressure on you to take a bad deal type of thing. And you can see that when all these different strikes, like the SAG-AFTRA strike, this is taking away from time for actors to be able to get enough money to qualify for their health insurance. It's awful. It's just awful. As for the language learning model stuff, this is going to be one of those long-term regulation fights that we don't know if we're going to win. Right now, there are 2 lawsuits that I know about that are going up against OpenAI about plagiarism and them stealing works, and we'll see how those play out. But it's kind of amazing to watch, since the United Auto Workers have gone on strike, the difference in the comments when it's something really concrete and something you can see and you're driving around, it's like a, it's a moving weapon, how the support works for them versus creatives and authors, and they're like, you told people to learn to code, well now you need to learn to code. I don't need to learn to code, all I have to do is tell ChatGPT to do it. But I put stuff into ChatGPT and it sounded human to me. You need to read more books. Sorry. You just do. So, there's a lot on here, especially with what has been going on with, say, Jane Friedman. She found books using her name that were seemingly written by language learning models and posted under her name on Amazon for sale. So not only was it, identity theft, it was plagiarized identity theft through the language learning models. And she had to go to the Authors Guild and go to get publicity for it to the papers in order to put enough pressure on Amazon to take them down off of Amazon and take the books off of Goodreads. And because she hadn't written them and she knew she hadn't written them, and Amazon should have known she hadn't written them, because as an indie author, you give up some identification, you have some sort of identifying number for them to give you tax paperwork. So they should have known that it was not Jane Friedman's tax number there. And she couldn't trademark her author name. That's just, you can't do it. Like, that's not something you trademark in the books industry. So you have to rely on Amazon being a good corporation, which obviously. And then we also are seeing these books going up on Amazon that have been generated through a language learning model that are for things like foraging by people who don't even exist. And if you eat the wrong plant, and because plants can look very similar and one is good for you and one will kill you, you could die. And it's very, very dangerous. Like, it's very, very dangerous, that some of this stuff that's going on. And then the third grift is I've seen so far is there's, I don't know if it's just one author or more than one author. Not only do they use language learning models to help them write their books, supposedly, they are also creating a market funnel class to teach other people how to do it for, $29.99 a month. Not really what they're doing, but you get the idea. It's a grift. And believe me, if you spend enough time with these language learning models, you'll figure out how to do the prompts on your own. You don't need somebody to teach you for over $100 how to write prompts into a language learning model. That's, my God. So we would need to, as authors, address these questions. Is it time to change the publishing industry in such a way that it will give the authors more voice, more power, and a better ability to have a standard of living, and a good standard of living, to be able to see the numbers of sales, and they keep track of piracy and stuff like that too. So just making it more open and honest for the authors, and how we define authors too. Like this, if I personally think that if you are a independent author and you have published a book on Amazon and you can prove that you wrote it, and you can, or you can prove you're a real human being, that you should be able to be part of a union or an association. But in order to get that type of help that traditional authors are getting just because they got a traditional publishing contract. But that's just me. I don't like putting divisions between authors. I don't, you know, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth that, you know, we're all here, we're all trying to do the same thing, we're trying to do our best, and, you know, we do the best we can with what we've got, and we're all facing the same struggles. Why put these little divisions between us that are just completely, you know, mandatory so we can all feel better about ourselves? I don't know, kicking down? That's just me. But, you know, is this the time? Is it even possible? I don't know. The little platform, probably not a lot of people are going to see this video, but I just wanted to put out there that we, maybe as authors, we would be stronger if we all worked together, you know, comic book writers and, you know, traditional published authors and indie authors, because they're, the corporations, they're just getting bigger, and they're just making more and more money, and it's not coming down to the rest of us, you know. Their record profits aren't making it back into our pockets, you know. It's making it into the pockets of the CEOs, and sometimes it makes you wonder, did things really, are things really that good, or is it stock buybacks and, oh, we're not going to publish these 2,000 authors, we're going to cancel these deals, you know, things like that. I know that's a little bit of a downer, no? But take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.